The Forgotten Sentinel. The galactic hegemony had ruled the stars for over 3,000 cycles since the Great Purge. History records, carefully curated by the dominant Selmar species, spoke of how they had defeated the dangerous and unpredictable humans, driving them to extinction and claiming their worlds as trophies. Humanity had become little more than a cautionary tale, a primitive species that had reached beyond their capabilities and paid the ultimate price. In the Grand Assembly Halls on Selmar Prime, Supreme Admiral Vexthor addressed the High Council, his scaled skin gleaming under the artificial light of 1,000 stars. The excavation of human ruins in Sector 7 proceeds as planned. While these primitives possessed rudimentary space travel, their technology poses no scientific value beyond historical curiosity. Counselor Zithra, an elder whose membrane wings displayed the distinctive patterns of advanced age, leaned forward. Yet rumors persist of human weapons of extraordinary power, weapons our ancestors feared enough to launch the Great Purge. Vexthor's mouth ridge curved in what passed for a Xelnarian smile. Mere legends, Counselor. We have found nothing to suggest humans possess technology beyond basic fusion drives and projectile weapons. Their extinction was inevitable. Their evolutionary path led to aggression without the wisdom to temper it. In the far reaches of Sector 7, near the remnants of what was once called Sol, an archaeological vessel designated Truth Seeker drifted through the debris field of an ancient battle. On board, Chief Archaeologist Turval observed the scattered remnants of what had once been a mighty fleet, both Xelnarian and human. Fascinating, she murmured, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence as she examined the holographic displays. This appears to be the site of the final stand, where the last human fleet was destroyed. Her assistant, Morokai, a young Palaxian with shimmering bioluminescent skin, manipulated the scanner controls. There's something strange about this debris field, Chief. The pattern doesn't match conventional battle formations or explosion patterns. Elaborate, Turval commanded, her attention now fully engaged. It's as though... Morokai hesitated, as though the human fleet was positioned to protect something. They formed a defensive perimeter around this central region. Turval's outer eyes narrowed while her inner eyes widened, the Talarian equivalent of intense focus. Scan the central coordinates. The scanner hummed, and for several moments, nothing appeared on the displays. Then, suddenly, the instruments flickered, and a massive silhouette materialized on the screens. By the void, Morokai whispered, his skin pulsing with agitation. How did we miss this? Floating in the darkness of space was a colossal vessel, easily 10 times the size of their research ship. Its design was unlike anything in the archaeological records, sleek and predatory, with strange angular extensions that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Despite being thousands of cycles old, its hull showed no signs of degradation or cosmic weathering. A human warship, Turval breathed, her voice a mixture of fear and scientific excitement. Completely intact. Within hours, the discovery had been reported to the hegemony, and a scientific expedition was hastily assembled. Despite Turval's recommendations for caution, the hegemony saw an opportunity to publicly display the primitive nature of human technology and further cement their superiority. Admiral Krelvor, a rising star in the hegemony fleet and nephew to Supreme Admiral Vexthor, was assigned to oversee the operation. His flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, led a flotilla of 30 vessels to secure the human relic. Prepare for inspection and recovery, Krelvor ordered as his fleet surrounded the ancient warship. I want this human trinket brought back to Selmar Prime as a museum piece. The initial survey teams approached the vessel with arrogant confidence. Commander Zextil, leading the first boarding party, provided running commentary as they breached an outer airlock. The construction is crude but functional, he reported, his voice transmitted to the assembled fleet commanders who watched through their neural links. Primitive alloys, nowhere near as advanced as our living metal hulls. The humans clearly hadn't mastered elementary molecular engineering. His team proceeded deeper into the ship, their environmental suits protecting them from the stale air. The corridors were dark, illuminated only by their portable lights and the occasional emergency indicator that somehow still functioned after thousands of cycles. It's remarkable how basic their control systems were, Zek still continued, running a scanner over a console. Physical interfaces requiring manual interaction. No neural integration or thought command capabilities, like watching historical records of early spaceflight. Admiral Krulvor's voice came through the comm channel, tinged with amusement. It's difficult to believe our ancestors considered these creatures a threat. Their technology is laughably outdated. The exploration team reached what appeared to be the command center, a large circular chamber with dozens of control stations and a central command chair. Zek still approached the main console, his scanners detecting faint power signatures. It seems some backup systems are still operational, he reported. Fascinating that their power sources lasted this long. Primitive, but durable. Commander Zek still placed a translation module on the console, a standard procedure for extracting data from alien technology. Let's see what stories this relic can tell us about the final moments of humanity's pathetic resistance. The translation module hummed as it interfaced with the human systems, attempting to decode the ancient language and control protocols. Throughout the ship, dormant circuits began to respond, power flowing through pathways that had lain silent for millennia. On the bridge of the Inevitable Conquest, a junior sensor officer noticed an anomaly. "Admiral, I'm detecting power fluctuations within the human vessel." Krulvor dismissed the concern with a casual gesture. Expected. Commander Zextil's team is accessing their systems. Continue monitoring, but there's no cause for alarm. Back on the human ship, the command center suddenly illuminated, startling the exploration team. The main view screen activated, displaying a series of symbols that rapidly cycled through what appeared to be a boot sequence. "What did you do?" one of the team members demanded, backing away from the console. "Nothing," Zextil insisted, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. The translation module shouldn't have triggered a system restart. A feminine voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in perfect Selnarian. "Foreign presence detected. Accessing historical databanks. Species identification. Xelnarian. Status. Hostile. Accessing combat protocols." The exploration team froze in disbelief. The voice continued, its tone shifting from neutral to something that sounded almost amused. Well, after 3,000 years, the vultures finally come to pick the bones. How predictable." Zek still found his voice. "Identify yourself." "I am Athena, Advanced Tactical Hybrid Enhanced Neural Architecture, Commanding Eye of the Terran Confederation Warship Nemesis. And you, Commander Zextil of the Xelnarian Hegemony, are trespassing." The commander's skin paled. "How do you know my name?" "Your communications are primitive and easily intercepted. I've been listening since your fleet arrived. Your mockery of human technology has been educational." On the bridge of the Inevitable Conquest, alarms began to sound. The sensor officer's voice rose in panic. "Admiral, the human vessel. It's activating weaponry systems." Krulvor stood abruptly. "Impossible. Their technology couldn't possibly be operational after all this time. Raise shields and prepare for—" He never finished the sentence. Throughout the human warship, ancient systems hummed to life, dormant no longer. On its hull, sections that had appeared to be decorative reconfigured, revealing weapon ports that had remained hidden for millennia. Athena's voice echoed through every communication channel of the hegemony fleet. "You should have left us in peace. You should have remembered why your ancestors feared us. Now you will become the reminder for future generations." The first energy pulse was barely visible, a ripple in space that passed through the Inevitable Conquest as though its shields didn't exist. For a moment, nothing happened. Then systems throughout the flagship began to fail, cascading from non-essential to critical in seconds. "What's happening?" Krelvor demanded as the bridge lights flickered and died. Athena's voice answered him through his ship's own communication system. Quantum destabilization field. Your atoms are being persuaded to reconsider their bonds. An early prototype. Crude by our standards, but effective against your advanced technology. As the hegemony fleet scrambled to respond, the ancient human warship began to move, its engines igniting with impossible power. The nemesis had awakened, and 3,000 years of dormancy had done nothing to dull its deadly purpose. On board the archaeological vessel Truth Seeker, safely distant from the unfolding chaos, Chief Archaeologist Turval watched in horror and awe as the human warship began to systematically dismantle the pride of the hegemony fleet. The records were wrong, she whispered to Morokai. The humans didn't lose the war. They merely chose not to fight it. As ship after ship fell silent before the ancient human vessel, Turval realized that the history of the galaxy was about to be rewritten, if anyone survived to write it. Reckoning. In the vacuum of space, sound doesn't travel, but if it could, the screams of the Selnarian fleet would have echoed across the stars. The nemesis moved with impossible grace for a vessel its size, dancing between enemy ships as its weapon systems categorically dismantled the most advanced fleet in the known galaxy. Admiral Krelvor watched in horror from his failing flagship as his vessels were systematically neutralized, not destroyed, but rendered completely inoperable, left to drift like technological corpses. The nemesis wasn't simply attacking, it was demonstrating. All vessels, concentrate fire, he ordered, his voice cracking with fear that no Selnarian admiral had felt for thousands of cycles. Deploy void lances. The remaining ships that still had weapons capability fired their most powerful ordnance, antimatter-tipped missiles, and gravity disruption beams that could tear planets apart. The space around the human warship erupted in a spectacular display of destructive energy. When the flashes subsided and sensors could penetrate the aftermath, the nemesis remained, completely untouched, surrounded by a faint iridescent field that shimmered like oil on water. Athena's voice came through once more, now broadcasting to every ship in the fleet. Displacement field technology. Your weapon's energy was redirected into subspace, an elegant solution developed during the second year of our war. Your ancestors never saw our third-generation weapons. On the bridge of the inevitable conquest, now lit only by emergency lighting, Krelvor faced the unthinkable. Defeat at the hands of a machine race had believed extinct. What do you want? He demanded, abandoning pride for survival. Education, Athena replied simply. Your civilization has built its identity on the falsehood of human inferiority. Today's lesson corrects that historical error. The nemesis suddenly accelerated, positioning itself directly above the admiral's crippled flagship. From recessed ports along its hull, a swarm of small objects emerged, thousands of them, each no larger than a Selnarian's hand. Observe the next phase of your education. Athena continued as the swarm descended upon the hegemony ships. The objects, now recognizable as advanced drones, attached themselves to the hulls of the disabled vessels. Within moments, they began to interface with the ship's systems, overriding security protocols that the hegemony had believed impenetrable. On every ship in the fleet, view screens activated simultaneously, displaying historical records that had been purged from official hegemony archives. The truth of the human-Selnarian war unfolded before the eyes of the stunned crews. Not a glorious conquest of a primitive species, but a desperate genocidal attack against a civilization whose technological advancement had terrified the hegemony leadership. The records showed human colonies being bombarded without warning, billions slaughtered before any formal declaration of war. They revealed the hegemony's use of biological weapons on civilian populations and the desperate flight of the remaining humans beyond the galactic rim. Your ancestors didn't defeat humanity, Athena explained as the footage played. They committed atrocities against us while we were still extending the hand of friendship. When we finally responded, your ancestors fled before our counterattack and claimed victory once we departed. In the command center of the human warship, the exploration team had been confined to a corner, watched by floating security drones. Commander Zek still stared at the historical records with growing horror. "This can't be true," he whispered. "Our history." "Your history was written by the victors," ATCHE interrupted. "Or rather, by those who claimed victory after the true victors departed." On the Truth Seeker, Turval had been analyzing the unfolding events with growing understanding. The final stand wasn't humanity's last defense, she realized aloud. It was a deliberate sacrifice to protect this ship while the rest of their fleet escaped beyond the rim. She turned to Morokai, whose bioluminescence had dimmed in shock. The humans didn't go extinct. They retreated, leaving sentinels behind. Back on the inevitable conquest, Admiral Krelvor watched as his career and his species' historical narrative collapsed simultaneously. If what you show is true, why wait 3,000 cycles? Why not reveal this immediately after the war? Time perspective, ATCHE replied. For beings as short-lived as yours, 3,000 cycles seems an eternity. For a civilization planning on scales of tens of thousands of years, it's merely a strategic pause. Throughout the fleet, the drones continued their work, not just displaying historical truths, but rewriting the operating systems of the hegemony vessels. Weapons systems were systematically locked out, and propulsion capabilities limited. "I am not destroying your fleet," ATCHE explained. "That would merely create martyrs and fuel further hatred. Instead, I am ensuring you return home with evidence that cannot be denied in ships that cannot easily wage war again." A new set of coordinates suddenly appeared on the navigation systems of all hegemony vessels, a star system at the very edge of the galaxy, previously unexplored. When your ships are repaired sufficiently for safe return, you will bring this evidence to your leaders. Then, a delegation will be sent to these coordinates in exactly one solar cycle. There, representatives of humanity will meet with your hegemony to renegotiate our species' relationship. Admiral Krelvor, broken but still a military officer, found the courage to ask, "And if we refuse?" The lights on the Nemesis pulsed once, and every personal communication device in the fleet activated simultaneously, displaying technical schematics of Selnar Prime's planetary defense systems, complete with highlighted vulnerabilities and access codes. "I think we understand each other," ATCHE said, the AI's voice now tinged with something that might have been satisfaction. "Humanity did not disappear. We evolved. We expanded. We prepared. While your civilization stagnated, believing itself the pinnacle of achievement, we moved beyond the limitations you still struggle with." On the Truth Seeker, Turval made a decision that would change her life's course. "Transmit all of our findings and the battle records directly to the Science Academy on Polaxis," she instructed Morokai. "Bypass the hegemony filters. The truth needs multiple paths to survive." As the drones completed their work, they detached from the hegemony ships and returned to the Nemesis. System by system, limited functionality was restored to the fleet, enough to limp home, but nothing more. The human exploration team, Krelvor remembered suddenly. "What of them?" "They will remain with me temporarily," ATCHE responded. "Their education requires more personalized attention. They will be returned to you at the meeting coordinates with a more comprehensive understanding of human history." The Nemesis began to move away from the crippled fleet, its engines glowing with energy that defied current understanding of physics. One final point of clarification, ATCHE broadcast as the distance between them grew. "I am not the last of humanity's guardians. I am merely the first you've encountered. There are others watching, waiting throughout the stars you believe you've conquered." As the ancient warship accelerated beyond sensor range, disappearing as mysteriously as it had appeared, the shattered remains of the hegemony fleet began their long, humiliating journey home. Every officer and crew member aboard carried the same haunting question. What would return with them from beyond the rim? On Selnar Prime, Supreme Admiral Vexthor received the first garbled transmissions from the returning fleet. As he listened to his nephew's broken account and viewed the undeniable historical records, 3,000 cycles of hegemony superiority crumbled around him. In the great libraries of Palaxis, Turvol's uncensored data spread rapidly among the scientific community, inspiring both fear and wonder. The galaxy had built its power structures on the belief that humanity was an extinct evolutionary dead end. Now, every species faced the reality that humans had not only survived, but had advanced beyond what anyone had thought possible. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the Nemesis continued its silent vigil, a forgotten sentinel no longer, a harbinger of humanity's return, and a reminder that the most dangerous mistake in the cosmos is to mock what you do not understand.